Hey there YouTube, this is Azun from Pioneer, and today I'm bringing you my Baby Raccoon deck, or Tanukit as it was originally called when it was imported from the OCG. As you will notice, I have a few teched-in cards that I believe will be good meta calls this format, since the deck could really use any advantage that it can gather. But before I start, I will note that this is an excellent budget deck. I managed to piece it together mainly from, a small cost, but that was considering I had most of the cards lying around. Like, obviously I don't expect you to have the mistakes or the amenities, because most casual players won't, but if you are looking for a budget deck, you don't really have to run these. They're great, but you don't have to. They're just optional. Okay, so get into it. Pompoko and Tantan, these two are your main engine. They are the greatest cards in the deck, and your ideal turn 1 play is to go Pompoko, summon Tantan in face down defense position, because that is going to open you up turn 2. If you can defend them, which this deck does run quite a few traps, and ideally you have, if Tantan does get attacked, you still have a third monster on board. As long as you can keep one of them to go into your boss monster, then you're going to be plussing on your opponent the next turn. So these two, they're great. Ideally you want to open this. Okay. And I know someone's going to post saying, what about Chow Chow? Chow Chow is... he's a great card, but this deck essentially has no way of searching its monsters. It only special summons them to the field, and Chow Chow needs to be in the hand. Once this deck gets that effective way of searching, I think Chow Chow will become a very appealing card, but right now, it just isn't worth it. Okay. Now Nimble Momonga. This is another very good turn 1 play. You can go Nimble Momonga and use Pot of Duality in the same turn, which is sometimes ideal, especially if you don't open Pompoko or Tantan. So also, if you know your opponent's going to be going quite heavy with the attack, you can go Tantan, and then you can choose to summon Momonga in defense, and then you've basically put up a pretty solid wall while gaining life points. Because if you're not familiar, this guy lets you gain 1000 life points and then summon as many as you can from the deck in face down defense position. That's a common trait with all Nimble monsters as far as I know. Well, the level 2 ones anyway. Okay, next, a pretty good tech choice, Wind Up Kitten. Now this is one of those cards that always was one of the best cards ever conceived, but it just didn't have any synergy. But now it has in this deck, because it's essentially a walking compulse. If you read its effect, once per turn you can target one monster your opponent controls, return it to the hand. You can only use it once, but let's face it, you probably only want to use it once before you exceed effect, because it's only got an 800 body. But that effect is amazing. If they just leave a face-up Dracosack on the field, it's like bye-bye Dracosack, and then you overlay into your mini Dracosack. It's a very good card, but I feel like at 3 I was dead drawing it a lot, because if this card's on its own, it's very vulnerable. Okay, next, Junk Synchron. I shouldn't really need to say this. This deck runs, let's count, 14 level 2s. So, yeah, you're almost always going to have a target, and level 5 Synchros are going to be very popular and very powerful next format. Especially with Boojins running around, being able to go into Armades is a brilliant advantage. Next we have Raikous. This is summonable off Pompoko, sorry, and I think that in this slower format, Raikou is great because he can destroy anything. And now that Dragon Rulers are gone, 1-for-1 destruction is pretty important, and this also mills cards which has synergy later with cards like Closed Forest. It's a really good card, and I've decided to run 3. Because I've opted for BLS, but you don't have to. 2 is fine as well. Okay, next Thunder King. I like to treat this deck as a kind of advantage grinding deck, because late game, as I'll get to later, you can summon tokens and just make your opponent lose advantage by having to go for that, by having to beat down that token. So Thunder King just takes it one step further and makes them lose advantage just off the Thunder King. So any card which I can basically make my opponent go -4 is great. And Thunder King's a great example of that. People quite often have to Book of Moon the Thunder King, or have to Dark Hole a Thunder King, because he shuts down their play so much. Okay, then BLS. As I said earlier, I'm running 4 lights, 3 darks, but this is very searchable. And you're also the Raikou's mill like crazy. So this is kind of like a It's all or nothing. It's great when you do draw it, but quite often it gets milled, or you don't see it. It's just in there. You know, the deck doesn't run a lot of powerhouses on its own, so it's great. Next, I run the one Rotor because it searches out both all 3 junk Synchrons. I've considered tuning. I don't really see the advantage of it just yet. I feel like it mills enough with Raikous, but I will give it some more thought. Okay, the one Dark Hole, because, you know, Dark Hole. Just the 2-part duality. This deck does do a lot of special summoning past turn 1 and 2. You usually have special summons every single turn. So 2 is great because I want to open with it, but I do not want to be top decking it. Okay, just the 2 MST because didn't really have room for a third. 2 is fine in my opinion. You just have the third sided. The one Book of Moon because being able to reuse your own effects is great, and Book of Moon's pretty damn good on its own anyway. 2 Closed Forest. This is amazing. I have had Nimble Momongas with 1000 body by default floating around on 2200. And I know that seems stupid, but it happens more often than not. In fact, I've had a Nimble Momonga on about 3000 because you go through your monsters so quickly, and your Xyzs and your Synchros, it just happens so quickly. And you don't realize how fast that boost adds up. Also, being able to stop your opponent getting their fields cards off is not as relevant this format as it was last, but it still is pretty important against some decks. And if you're up against something like Prophecy, it'll almost always bait out their fate. Almost always, or their MST, but yeah, because some of them are maining MST now. Okay, next, 2 Horn of the Phantom Beast. It helps your token get over whatever you're attacking, so if you have this set and you summon a token, it will always beat the strongest monster on the field, which is great. And it helps you draw cards. So I normally consider this to be a 1-for-1, which also lets me get over my opponent's monster. So it's more of like an offensive lance which replaces itself. I do like it. Okay, then there's the Bottomless, the 2 Mirror Force, Torrential and Compulse. They're just my choices. You can change these around if you want. I'm running 2 Fiendish Chain because I haven't gone in the way of Veilers. I think Fiendish is more important to protect your weak-bodied monsters. 2 Mistakes, because I think that is very good this format. But I happen to have a playset already, so I just decided to play around with it, and it really works well, because this deck only has 3 cards that Mistake stops, and that's Reinforcements and Double Pot Duality, which you can play around. And even if you don't, 9 out of 10 times you're going to be winning just from this card more than you're losing. And then the 1 Solemn Warning. Moving on to the extra deck. We'll go backwards. Dark Mist, because it deals with some annoying occurrences where you just need something that can be over by battle. I can't think of any examples, but he's in here. You got the room. The 1 Armor Kappa, because, you know, in a push, you might need him. Double Gachi, because Gachi has, well, he's a great staller, and he has a great interaction with your boss monster, number 64, which he'll give a bonus attack to number 64, and then you summon a token, it'll copy 64's attack, and then it receives the bonus attack again. So, great interaction. The 1 Dagusto Phoenix, very rarely make it, but when you do 3k damage. It's quite a lot, it's worth running. Then I run 1 Volcasaurus and 1 Gaia. I probably wouldn't run this in a proper environment, but I've only been to friendly tournaments for this deck, and I did actually make Volcasaurus burn attack with Gaia for game. When my opponent had a I can't remember what card it was, but it was really trolly and stolly, and it was just better than the Junk Warrior and Amides I had on the field. Next, Catastor. It's Catastor. Junk Warrior, I've got this guy up to about 5,000, 6,000 attack, because if you use this your boss monster to create a token, quite often, especially if Closed Forest on the field, that token's going to be floating around about 3,000 to 4,000, and then Junk Warrior will eat all that attack up. He will go up, if say it's on 3,000, he'll go up to 5,300. This is an amazing card, it wins games. Amides, I play 2 of them because I make him quite often because, you know, it avoids that back row, and it makes your opponent really have to use resources to get around him. I play the 1 Black Rose because it is possible, and yeah, it's a Black Rose, you kind of need it sometimes. I have made him very rarely. Like I said, this extra deck, you'll notice I said a lot of the things I don't actually go into that much. You don't really need that much. The only essential pieces I'd say were the Synchros and 64s and Gachis. Okay, well, This has been Azun, and this has been my Baby Raccoon / Tanukit deck, and leave me some feedback. Thanks guys.